The courtroom fell silent as Judge Henry Miller raised his gavel. His stern blue eyes focused on the woman standing before him. She was dressed neatly in a simple gray suit, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. "Ms. Oliver, this court finds you guilty of excessive speeding. That will be a fine of £300, Judge Miller declared, his voice echoing through the room. Emma Oliver gripped the edge of the table. "Your Honor, please. I was rushing to the hospital. My mother had fallen. The law makes no exceptions for personal emergencies when public safety is at risk," he interrupted, not even looking up from his papers. "Pay the clerk on your way out." Emma stood there for a moment, her brown eyes meeting his. There was something in that glance, a flash of connection, quickly replaced by the judge's cold professionalism. Emma had seen that look before in her years as a lawyer. She straightened her shoulders and walked out, her head held high. What Judge Miller didn't know as he moved on to the next case was that Emma Oliver was about to become an important person in his life. Tomorrow, she would be starting as the newest senior partner at Bennett & Wright, the prestigious law firm where his brother was managing partner, the same firm that had just invited Henry to join their judicial advisory board. The next morning was bright and clear. Henry arrived early at the Bennett & Wright offices, eager to make a good impression. He had left his judge's robes behind, dressed instead in a smart navy suit. His brother James greeted him warmly in the reception area. "You're just in time, Henry. The morning meeting is about to start. I want you to meet everyone, especially our newest addition to the team." Henry nodded, following his brother into the large conference room where several well-dressed professionals were already seated around a polished wooden table. James led him to the head of the table. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce my brother, Judge Henry Miller, who will be joining our judicial advisory board," James announced proudly. "And Henry, I'd especially like you to meet Emma Oliver, your new senior partner specializing in civil rights law," a familiar voice finished. Henry turned, his coffee cup nearly slipping from his hand. Standing before him was the woman he had found just yesterday. Her handshake was firm, her smile professional but cool. "Judge Miller and I have already met," she said to the curious faces around the table. "Yesterday, in fact." Henry's face flushed red. "Ms. Oliver, Courtroom 7B, she added calmly. "I was the defendant." A heavy silence fell over the room. James cleared his throat, looking between them with confusion. "Well," Emma continued smoothly, "I believe we'll be working closely together on the Pembroke Foundation project. I look forward to your judicial perspective, Your Honor." As the meeting began, Henry couldn't focus on the presentation. His mind kept returning to their courtroom encounter, seeing it now through different eyes. Had he been fair? Had he truly listened to her explanation? The questions followed him like shadows through the entire morning. During the coffee break, he noticed how others treated Emma with great respect. He overheard snippets about her impressive work history, her reputation for winning difficult cases, her dedication to justice reform. "She's worked twice as hard as anyone to get where she is," he heard one associate tell another. "Oxford Law, top of her class, turned down offers from 5 major firms to work in legal aid for 3 years. Henry watched Emma from across the room. She spoke with quiet authority, listened carefully to others, and took notes with focused attention. This was not just another speeding case defendant. This was a respected legal mind, someone whose path had crossed his in the most unexpected way. As the day ended, Henry found himself alone with Emma in the elevator. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words. "Ms. Oliver," he finally said as the elevator descended, "about yesterday." "It's not important, Judge Miller," she replied, eyes fixed on the changing floor numbers. "I think it is," he insisted quietly. "Our paths have crossed in a way neither of us expected. We'll be working together now, and I think we should start fresh." The elevator doors opened. Emma stepped out, then turned to face him. "Fresh starts require new perspectives, Your Honor," she said. "I wonder if you're really ready for that." She walked away, leaving Henry standing there, realizing this was just the beginning of what promised to be a challenging partnership. For 2 weeks, Henry and Emma worked on opposite sides of the Pembroke Foundation project. They were polite but distant in meetings. Emma always came prepared with detailed notes and strong arguments. Henry found himself impressed by her sharp mind, though he would never admit it openly. One Tuesday morning, James called an emergency meeting. The Pembroke Foundation case had hit a major problem. Their main witness had backed out. "This puts us in a difficult position," James said, looking worried. "We need a new approach, and we need it quickly." "I might have an idea," Emma said quietly. From her end of the table, several of the senior partners exchanged doubtful glances. One of them, Richard Webb, spoke up. "With all due respect, Ms. Oliver, this case requires years of experience. Perhaps you should leave the strategy to those of us who've been here longer." Henry noticed how Emma's face remained calm, though her fingers tightened around her pen. He had seen this before. How quickly her ideas were dismissed. How she had to work twice as hard to be heard. "Actually," Henry heard himself saying, "I'd like to hear Ms. Oliver's thoughts." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him, surprise clear on their faces. Emma's eyes met his, showing a flash of curiosity. "Please continue," he said, nodding to her. Emma straightened in her chair. "I believe we can approach this from a different angle. Instead of focusing on individual testimony, we can build our case on the pattern of institutional behavior. I've prepared a brief outline." As she explained her strategy, Henry watched the faces around the table change from doubt to interest. Her plan was brilliant, better than anything the rest of them had considered. When the meeting ended, people gathered around Emma, asking questions and building on her ideas. Henry hung back, observing how she handled the sudden attention with grace. As the room emptied, he found himself alone with her. "Thank you," she said simply, gathering her papers. "For what?" "For giving me the chance to speak. Not everyone does that." Henry nodded slowly. "Your idea might save this case. I should be thanking you." A small smile touched her lips. "Then we're even." That evening, Henry stayed late at the office reading through case files. Around 9 o'clock, he walked to the break room for coffee and found Emma there, surrounded by papers, her dinner a half-eaten sandwich pushed to the side. "You don't have to work this late," he said from the doorway. Emma looked up, circles under her eyes. "Actually, I do. Some of us don't have the luxury of being assumed competent." Her honest words hit him hard. Henry poured 2 cups of coffee and placed one beside her. "About that day in court," he began carefully. "I've been thinking about it. A lot. It doesn't matter now." "It does," he insisted, sitting across from her. "I didn't listen to you. I made up my mind before you finished speaking." Emma set down her pen and looked at him directly. "Do you know how many times I've been cut off mid-sentence? How many times my urgency has been dismissed as emotional? That day in court wasn't special, Henry. It was just an ordinary Tuesday for me." The use of his first name wasn't lost on him, nor was the truth in her words. "Tell me about your mother," he said suddenly. "Is she all right? After her fall?" Surprise flickered across Emma's face. "She's better now, thank you. She broke her hip. That's why I was speeding that day. The hospital called saying she was asking for me." Henry nodded, feeling shame wash over him. "I'm sorry I didn't ask that day." "Why would you? I was just another case number." "No," he said quietly. "You weren't. I remember thinking you seemed different, so composed, so dignified even when I cut you off. That's why I recognized you right away at the firm." Emma studied him for a long moment. "People can surprise you, can't they?" "They can," he agreed. "Like your idea today. It was brilliant. Yet nobody would have heard it if you hadn't spoken up." The truth of her words hung between them. Henry realized how much power he had always taken for granted. The power to be heard, to be respected without question. "Working late won't seem so lonely if we order some proper food," he said, pushing the sad sandwich aside. "There's a good place that delivers. My treat, as an apology for the fine." Emma's laugh was unexpected and warm. "The fine was fair, technically. I was speeding. then dinner is just because we're colleagues who need to eat. As they waited for the food, they talked about the case, then about their careers, then about their lives. Henry learned about Emma's journey through law school, about the teacher who changed her life, about the barriers she'd faced. For the first time, he truly listened. The Pembroke Foundation case grew more complex each day. After their late dinner, at the office something had changed between Henry and Emma. They weren't friends exactly, but a mutual respect had formed, built on that first honest conversation. Now they often found themselves working together, their different perspectives, creating a stronger approach. One rainy Thursday, Henry arrived at the office to find everyone gathered around the conference room television. The news showed protesters outside the courthouse. The Pembroke case had become front-page news. "This puts even more pressure on us," James said, turning down the volume. "The public is watching every move." Richard Webb shook his head. "We should settle. The publicity is getting dangerous." "No," Emma said firmly. "Settling means the truth stays hidden. That's not justice." "With all due respect, Ms. Oliver," Richard replied with a hint of mockery, "sometimes pragmatism matters more than idealism." Henry saw Emma's jaw tighten, saw how she took a deep breath before responding. He had noticed this pattern, how she had to carefully control her reactions, how she couldn't show frustration without being labeled emotional or difficult. "I agree with Emma," Henry said before she could answer. "Justice shouldn't bend to convenience." The room fell silent again. James looked between them with raised eyebrows. "Well," James finally said, "if you two are in agreement, I want you to lead this together. Henry's experience as a judge and Emma's fresh perspective make you the perfect team." That afternoon, they sat in Emma's office, surrounded by case files. Rain tapped steadily against the windows as they worked through strategy. Around 6 o'clock, Henry noticed Emma wincing as she rubbed her shoulder. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Old injury," she explained. "Acts up when I sit too long or when it rains. Basketball accident in university." "You played basketball?" Emma smiled. "Captain of the team at Birmingham. Surprised?" "Honestly? Yes." Henry leaned back in his chair. "I'm realizing how many assumptions I make without thinking." "That's true for everyone," Emma said, stretching her arm. "The difference is whose assumptions get to become decisions that affect others." Her words struck him. As a judge, his assumptions became verdicts. His biases, conscious or not, shaped people's lives. "Tell me about your mother," he said suddenly. Emma looked surprised at the change of subject. "What do you want to know?" "Whatever you want to tell me. I've been thinking about her since you mentioned the hospital that day in court." Emma's expression softened. She reached for her phone and showed him a photo of an elegant older woman with the same warm brown eyes. "That's her. Margaret Oliver, retired teacher. Raised me alone after my father died when I was 8. Everything I am is because of her strength. She must be very proud of you." "She is, though she still calls me every Sunday to make sure I'm eating properly and not working too hard." Emma laughed, then looked at him curiously. "What about your family?" For the first time in years, Henry found himself talking openly about his life, about growing up in his brother's shadow, about his failed marriage, about the loneliness of being a judge. "People see the robes, the authority, not the person," he admitted. "It's isolating in its own way." "Different kinds of isolation," Emma nodded. "Different kinds of burdens." As evening deepened, rain pounding harder outside, they ordered dinner again. Their conversation moved from the case to books they'd read, places they'd visited, dreams they'd once had. "I wanted to reform the justice system from within," Henry confessed. "But somewhere along the way, I became part of the very system I wanted to change." "It's not too late," Emma said quietly. "That's what this case is about, the chance to make real change." The next morning, they presented their joint strategy to the team. The approach was bold, combining Henry's inside knowledge of judicial thinking with Emma's innovative legal arguments. Everyone in the room could see they had become a powerful partnership. After the meeting, Richard pulled Henry aside in the hallway. "What are you doing, Henry?" he asked with disapproval. "Getting so close to her? She's not one of us." Henry stared at him. "What exactly do you mean by us, Richard?" "You know what I mean. She's from a different world, different background. Different. Everything." "You're right about one thing," Henry said coldly. "Emma is different. She works harder, thinks deeper, and cares more about justice than anyone in this room, including me." He walked away, leaving Richard speechless. As he turned the corner, he found Emma waiting by the elevator. From her expression, he knew she had heard everything. "Thank you," she said simply as they stepped into the elevator together. "For what?" "For seeing me," she replied. "Really seeing me." As summer turned to autumn, the Pembroke case consumed their days and many of their evenings. Henry and Emma developed a rhythm, each anticipating the other's thoughts, finishing each other's sentences in meetings. Their colleagues noticed the change, how they had become a unified front. One evening in late September, they worked late in the firm's library. Outside, rain poured down in heavy sheets, making the world beyond the windows a blur of streetlights and shadows. "I found something," Emma said suddenly, her voice tense with excitement. She pushed a document across the table to Henry. "Look at these dates." Henry studied the paper, his eyes widening. "These financial records don't match what they submitted to the court." "Exactly," Emma leaned forward. Pembroke Foundation was hiding money while claiming they couldn't afford proper safety measures. Henry felt a rush of admiration. For weeks they had been searching for this missing piece, and Emma had found it. This could win their case. "This is brilliant work, Emma," he said sincerely. She smiled, the rare kind that reached her eyes. "It helps to have someone who believes in you." Their celebration was interrupted by Henry's phone ringing. He answered, his expression quickly changing to concern. "James, slow down, what happened?" He listened, growing pale. "Yes, I'm with her now, we'll be right there." Emma looked at him questioningly as he hung up. "Richard Webb went to the opposition with our strategy," Henry explained grimly. "He sabotaged the case." "What? Why would he do that?" Henry hesitated, not wanting to hurt her. "James thinks he didn't want to see you succeed." Emma's face showed no surprise, only a resigned understanding that made Henry's heart ache. She had faced this kind of betrayal before. "We need to go to James's office," he said. "Everyone's gathering for an emergency meeting. The firm's conference." Room was tense when they arrived. Richard was noticeably absent. Partners and associates spoke in angry whispers. James stood at the head of the table looking exhausted. "Richard has been asked to leave the firm," James announced when everyone was seated. "But the damage is done. The opposition now knows our entire strategy." "Then we need a new one," Emma said simply. "In 3 days?" Another partner scoffed. "Impossible." "Not if we work together," Henry said, standing beside Emma. "We've lost the element of surprise, but we still have the truth on our side." They worked through the night, ordering food, drinking endless cups of coffee. By morning, they had built a completely new approach. It was risky, but it might work. As dawn broke, most of the team went home to shower and change before court. Henry found Emma standing by the window, watching the sunrise paint the city in gold. "You should rest for an hour," he said gently. "So should you," she replied, not turning around. "Emma," he began hesitantly, "I need to say something. I'm sorry." She turned to face him. "For what?" "For people like Richard. For every time someone dismissed you because of who you are rather than what you can do. For that day in my courtroom when I was one of those people." Emma studied his face. "You've changed since then." "Because of you," he admitted. "You've made me see things differently. Made me question judgments I thought were fair." A soft smile touched her lips. "That's what good partners do. Help each other see blind spots." "Partners," he repeated, liking the word. 3 days later, they stood together in the courtroom. The judge, an old colleague of Henry's, looked skeptical as they presented their new arguments. Emma spoke with passion about the workers who had been harmed, while Henry methodically laid out the legal precedents. During the opposition's counter-arguments, Henry watched Emma carefully taking notes. Her hands were steady, her focus complete. He remembered how he had once dismissed her in his courtroom, never imagining the brilliant mind behind those determined eyes. When court adjourned for the day, reporters crowded outside. One pushed a microphone toward them. "Judge Miller, how does it feel to be on this side of the courtroom? And Ms. Oliver, how does it feel working with the judge who once fined you?" Henry tensed, but Emma handled the question smoothly. "Life takes unexpected turns," she said. "Sometimes the person who seems furthest from you becomes your strongest ally." That evening they sat in a small cafe near the courthouse reviewing the day's events. "Do you think we'll win?" Emma asked. "I don't know," Henry answered honestly. "But I do know we're fighting the right battle the right way." Emma nodded, then looked at him with curious eyes. "If you could go back to that day in your courtroom, would you decide differently?" Henry thought for a moment. "No," he said finally. Seeing her surprised expression, he smiled. "Because if I hadn't fined you that day, we might never have met, like this. Some mistakes lead to the right place even when we don't deserve the good that comes from them." Emma's laugh was warm in the quiet cafe. "That might be the wisest thing I've ever heard from a judge." "Former judge," he corrected. "Now just your partner." The final day of the Pembroke trial arrived with autumn sunshine streaming through the high courtroom windows. The room was packed, with reporters filling the back rows and members of the public standing along the walls. Henry and Emma sat side by side at the front, their case files neatly arranged before them. "Nervous?" Henry whispered. Emma gave a small shrug. "Focused," she corrected him. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Henry noticed how much Emma had changed him over these past months. Once, he had been the one in those black robes, seeing only the facts of a case, not the people affected by his decisions. Now he understood justice in a deeper way. The opposition made their closing arguments first. Their lawyer spoke confidently about technicalities and precedents. His words were impressive but lacked heart. When he finished, the judge turned to Emma. "Ms. Oliver, your closing statement, please." Emma stood, straightening her simple navy suit. Henry had seen her practice this speech a dozen times, refining each word. Yet nothing prepared him for the power of her voice as she addressed the court. "Your Honor, this case is about more than money or regulations," she began. "It's about people who trusted the Pembroke Foundation with their safety and were betrayed. It's about Margaret Wilson, who can no longer hold her grandchildren because of her injuries. About Thomas Clark, who worked 30 years only to lose his pension when he needed it most." Emma didn't raise her voice or use dramatic gestures. She simply spoke the truth with such clarity that the entire room fell under her spell. When she finished 10 minutes later, Henry saw something rare. The judge was genuinely moved. During the lunch break, they waited in a small room off the main corridor. Neither felt hungry. "Whatever happens," Henry said, "you were brilliant in there." Emma smiled. "We were brilliant. This was always a partnership." Henry thought about how far they had come since that first day in his courtroom. He had changed, in ways he never expected, becoming more understanding, more willing to listen, more aware of his own bias. "I've been thinking," he said carefully. "After this case ends, I'm considering something new." "Going back to being a judge?" Emma asked. "No. The opposite, actually. I want to start a program helping people who can't afford proper legal representation. People like those hurt by Pembroke." Emma looked at him with surprise. "That's a big change from your judicial career." "I've had a good teacher," he said simply, meeting her eyes. Before she could respond, James burst into the room. "They're calling everyone back. The judge has reached a decision already." They exchanged startled glances. A quick decision usually meant bad news. The courtroom was hushed as they took their seats. Henry felt Emma tense beside him. Under the table, he gave her hand a quick, reassuring squeeze. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked out at the crowded room. In the case of Wilson and others versus Pembroke Foundation, this court finds in favor of the plaintiffs. For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then from the back, someone began to clap. Others joined in until the applause filled the courtroom. Emma remained perfectly still, her face showing no emotion until the judge finished reading the full judgment. Complete compensation for all victims and a fine that would ensure Pembroke changed its practices forever. Only then did she turn to Henry, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We did it," she whispered. Outside the courthouse, they faced a crowd of reporters and cameras. Margaret Wilson, the lead plaintiff, hugged Emma tightly while photographers captured the moment. "Judge Miller," called one reporter, "how does it feel to win against a system you were once part of?" Henry paused, considering his words carefully. "I wasn't fighting against the system. I was fighting for what the system should be. Fair justice for everyone, regardless of their power or position." Another shouted, "Ms. Oliver, how did you and the judge overcome your initial courtroom encounter to form this partnership?" Emma smiled. "We learned to listen to each other, really listen, and we discovered that justice works best when different perspectives come together." Later that evening, the firm hosted a celebration dinner. Partners made speeches, champagne flowed, and everyone wanted to congratulate the winning team. Yet in the midst of the excitement, Henry noticed Emma slip away to the quiet balcony. He found her looking out at the city lights, peaceful amid the noise of celebration inside. "Everything all right?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "Just thinking about how strange life is," she said softly. "6 months ago, you were fining me in your courtroom. Now we've changed the lives of dozens of families together." Henry nodded. "I was thinking the same thing, about how sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected teachers." Emma turned to face him. "My mother wants to meet you. She says she needs to thank the man who finally taught her stubborn daughter the value of partnership." Henry laughed. "I'd like that, and I'd like to hear more about your legal aid idea too. It sounds like something I could contribute to." "It won't be easy," Emma warned. "It means starting over in many ways." "The best journeys often do," Henry replied, "and this time I won't be traveling alone." As they rejoined the celebration inside, Henry realized that sometimes justice worked in unexpected ways. His unfair judgment of Emma that day in court had led to the most fair and balanced partnership of his life, one that had not only won an important case but had changed him forever.